Hey there folks, I'm Bryce Holdaway. He is Ben Kingsley. We are the hosts of the Property Couch podcast. We're excited to bring a Facebook Live today on the early warning sign where investors go wrong with FOMO, Ben. And
FOMO!
It is something that we want to make sure everyone is crystal clear on, because if you get this one wrong, it is going to cost you a lot of money, let's be honest. But Ben, can you just refresh me, mate? Why did you get into property in the first place?
Well,
property investing in the first place.
Yes, I was going to say, it's just a vehicle. It's a vehicle for financial security. So, which has evolved now, obviously, into learning now that it's also allowing us to have choices and different aspects in our life and planning to become what we plan to become. But initially, when I was young, when I was starting out, I just wanted to be able to build some passive income for a wealthier retirement.
Mate, I must admit I've matured a lot in why I'm in property investing, because at the time it was to make some money, but I didn't realise what the money was for, and it was actually for me to get my time back and do the things that I really wanted to do with my time. So I hope that you're really clear on that, is because we talked about on the podcast when we recorded this morning. It's going this afternoon at 3 o'clock. You've got to check that out. But it's the 4 types of wealth, and I was fixated on just number 2. But now I am fixated more on 3 and 4 than I am. 2 is a vehicle for 3 and 4. I'm trying to avoid.
Now you're going to share, or do you have to listen to the podcast?
No, you've got to go to the podcast, man. But I'm trying to avoid type number 1, because that is fool's gold.
Yes, it is that. The whole social status aspect is complete fool's gold.
Oh, you're not going to curiosity approach. That's clear.
I go teasing with one.
Exactly. So if we can just have a quick look at the page here, you'll see that we've got this framed up. So we want to talk about the early warning signs with FOMO.
Yep.
And the early warning sign is very, very clear, Ben. It's when you're having conversations. We've been doing this now. I had the question this morning, when did I start in property? It was 98. So I'm ticking over the 23rd year in this as a property investor, and also helping people as part of my professional life. And the thing is, when you're talking to people and they're buying properties and they don't know why they're buying it other than they're just seeing everyone else buying it, that is a massive early warning sign, because we think FOMO only derails people who are ignorant. It doesn't derail people who are educated and know what they're talking about.
I mean, and it's also coming back to that whole timing thing, right? Long time in the market, getting your time back. From my point of view, it was also, I think I was 91 when I bought that first property. And so time has been very good, because that property was $120,000. Think about it, what it's worth now. But also timing the market, there is a science to that as well, right? So you shouldn't just be I'm just going to stay long-term in the market. I also effectively want to get the right execution at the right time. So I don't want to be buying into a market, say Perth in 2014, and I had to wait till now for that market to be moving. That's opportunity cost. So it's always really important. And of course, with basically lots of green lights in the marketplace at the moment, people do have FOMO. So that's why we want to unpack this today.
So we wanted to go through a bit of education with you today. We want to give you some tips that'll help you. But when it comes to property, Ben, I want you to talk to, when you're building a plan, typically, if I'm reading the magazines or I'm watching the gurus or reading the books, surely you've got to get 10, 20, 30 properties. Is that true?
No, mate. All you need is 5 less than or equal to properties.
Yeah.
So I think what we're trying to say here is, if you think about each property potentially giving you a passive income of, say, $20,000, well, 20 times 5 is $100,000, $2,000 a week. That's sort of how you can build up. But why we say less than or equal to 5 is really just about some properties that potentially, depending on your surplus income, are going to allow you to buy maybe something that generates, say, $30,000 in passive income or $40,000 in passive income. So you're not necessarily going to need that many. And when you think about it, what you are trying to do is replace your working income, to come back to your message before, Bryce, about getting time back, because that's what it means. So no, you don't have to go out and buy 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever that looks like, because at the end of the day, alignment around getting that balance right, because you also don't want to be in a situation where you've got so much debt and you're sitting down and you have to wait until your 50s or 60s to start enjoying that. So we say 5 or less properties, Bryce, is all you need to retire very, very comfortably.
Very comfortably. Folks, just want you to put a comment. Is that an aha for you? Are you exposed to the idea that you need to get 10 plus properties, you need to renovate, you need to redevelop, you need to get enormous amounts of finance? I want to know if you think that that is a new concept that in some cases we build a plan for a client that only has 3. In fact, one of our advisors, Joel, the other day sends me a little note to say, I just met with someone who was interested in buying more investment properties. And my advice to them was buy no more. That's it. You're done.
You're done.
And that was...
retire the debt, live off the passive.
And it was under 5.
Perfect.
So is that an aha? I just want to go and have a quick look to see. Can you let me know where you're from, where you're listening to us today? Just put your state in the comments. And also, yes or no. Was that an aha that yes, you can do it with 5 or less? Or was that no, I already knew that. I was well and truly across that. We've got one here from... Giannis, good on you lads, keep up the great work. Good to see you, Giannis. Thanks for popping in. Leave us some questions, we are going to answer them as we go through. You'll see that's coming through, but yeah, let us know. Aha or not. Now I want to introduce a concept here too, Ben, that if you're saying it's 5 less than or equal to 5 properties, I'm going to suggest to folks that the properties that you need to buy, in my opinion, you've got established or you have new properties to choose from. I'm going to suggest that you say a big fat tick to established and a big fat cross to new.
You mean not the bling, Bryce?
No.
But I'm emotionally attached to the bling. I get told that the bling brings me big depreciation. So from that point of view, I'm not necessarily interested in new for tax reasons, because that's the wrong story. The reason why we believe that established usually outperforms new, because again, we're trying to make sure you understand there are always exceptions to the rule, but the vast majority of why is got to do with the land value and where that land is located, and ultimately the full utilisation of land around that area. So if I pick on new, I'm picking on, it's usually being built, house and land packages out in estate areas where there's lots of vacant land or future supply, which is the enemy of capital growth. Or if I'm buying off the plan in a new high rise or medium density, I've also carried the risk in terms of oversupply there. So established housing in established areas where the land has been productively utilised is going to put you in good stead to potentially get that little bit extra every year when it comes to capital growth.
All right, Ben, so let me recap. You're saying that I can do this, I can build a passive income with 5 or less properties, and I should be directing myself into established. Okay, that makes sense to me. Now, just before I go on to the next point, I want to just read out a few here. Sai Charan Singh is from Sydney. Tony Fan Fuller is in Melbourne. Yes, 5 is enough. Like to hear that.
Nice.
Anouk is Baronia in Melbourne. We got Emily Galang from the surf coast of Victoria, doesn't she?
She's
live
down
in
your way.
Paradise. Well done, Emily. That is the centre of the universe. Kayla is in Melbourne. Kaylee has asked us a question. We'll get to that. We'll say g'day, Kelly from Cairns. We'll come back to you shortly with your question. We've got Ruchith from Chile, Melbourne. And we've got Rodney. Could now be a good time to buy CBD apartments. Oof, that's a good one for us to cover off. Okay, so 5 or less. Let us know where you're from, folks. Let us know if you have any questions. We're going to come to them. 5 or less established. So what I am then guessing, Ben, is let me see if I can have a go at this.
Oh, not bad.
It was better than my effort before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So if I live in Perth, I should only buy in Perth. If I live in Victoria, I should only buy in Victoria. If I live in Sydney, I should only buy in Sydney. If I live in Cairns, I should only buy in Cairns. If I live in Tasman. Is that true?
No. Obviously, that's pretty clear, I would have thought. So the concept... Yeah, I did. It was a layup for me in the end. Right? The reality is we're trying to look at demand and supply metrics that will determine where we are able to get not only short, but medium and longer term growth. And that can potentially mean that we buy in areas that we have some confidence about the economic drivers, the natural talent pool, the employment opportunities, and those type of things over a long period of time. What we've got now, as I said, there's green lights everywhere across Australia, and those green lights are lighting up because people are thinking that they can move to regional areas or whatever. But over time, those lifestyle locations do have times of demand, but they also have times of hiatus where they do slow down over that. I mean, Cairns is a good example, right? And even Perth for that matter. So we want to basically be looking at markets that we can get a good entry where it's not absolutely crazy and going, and we've missed the boat, but we also want to make sure that we don't just get this spike of growth, but we then want to get a nice consistent level of growth over the longer period of time, because it's that growth and that equity that we get that we can release to add to that. So we start with the 1, then we go to 2, then we go to 3, etc. Right? So ultimately what we're trying to do is we need the performance on that. And if we're only looking in our own backyard to get that, then we may be, doing business with one hand behind our back in terms of trying to get to that next stage. So
let's summarise that.
I do believe borderless.
Borderless. That is exactly what we're saying here. So I bought my first property in Perth because I'm a Perth boy, Ben. My second property was in Queensland. Then I bought in New South Wales. Then I bought into Victoria. So I have well and truly practiced what I preached there about being borderless.
Yep.
So we're going to encourage you. So we summarise again. 5 or less properties you've got to buy established in our humble opinion. And you should have your mind open to being borderless wherever you can. So there we go, folks. That's on the property side of things. Now, when it comes to buying individual for yourself, Ben.
Yep.
FOMO. There's the assets. We'll talk about. We've got some great questions there, so we'll come to that.
Yep.
But what about the individual? They're looking at their friends and they're going, "You're buying more properties. How do you actually afford that? Is that even possible?" So we want to give you a little bit of some tips on why some people are able to afford properties, just to let you know that it's probably achievable for you as well with some little tweaks. But first of all, we're going to talk about interest-only lending, Ben, on potentially on the principal place of residence.
Yeah, so I mean, if I can draw how a loan would potentially amortise, so this is time, okay, and this is money, and we take a loan out at a certain price point. If that was a 30-year loan that was principal and interest, that's what it looks like over that period of time. So that's P&I, where we're paying that loan down. Now, the challenge with doing that is obviously we are basically every repayment is a portion of principal. But what if we had a situation where we could say, well, maybe for that first 5 years or whatever, we go interest only. And by doing that, what we're actually doing is that repayment is actually less over that period of time. So by being less, it means that we're potentially in control and there's less out of pocket for us. So there is considerations around why you would do that. Now, we're not saying you never not pay off the loan, but what we are saying is we want to be in a situation where we might even be able to extend that, but we might also extend that period. So over time, we add properties because we're able to manage the commitments, but also as those properties grow in value and the rent goes up, and with really low interest rates, the shortfall no longer is a shortfall in terms of our outgoings. We actually start receiving money after we've covered all the costs. When we're doing that, property is positively geared and positive cash flow, which allows us to then reconsider our second purchase once we feel comfortable and we also know our line of sight on our cash flow.
So there we go, Ben. That's our first strategy around cash flow, right? So you're able to free up some cash so you can actually be in control of more assets. What about someone who's actually been on a P&I journey for some time, and then they realise that, well, I'd actually like to buy an investment property, but my budget is already stretched enormously. Is it possible to integrate principles that you've just discussed for someone who's been on the journey? Let's share that, because this, folks, I just want you to lean in on this, because this is a massive aha.
This is a winning strategy. So let's assume that we've got around 8 years to go on that loan repayment. Now that basically means that the greater portion of the regular repayment over the month is principal and less interest. Now, what if we were to reset that loan all the way back to 30 years? So let's say the breakdown of that was we're paying, say, $1,000 of principal every month. We can potentially, because here's the family budgets, let's say our family budget is $4,000 per month. Well, we're committed, right? And we don't have a lot of surplus left. But what if we reset this back where we're making principal and interest repayments again, back on a longer timeline? We're back here. All of a sudden, that principal might drop down to only, in these earlier stages, let's call it $150. So we've just recovered $850 per month to look to control another property. So that is the message here when it comes to if your family budget, you feel it is committed, you can potentially reset your level of debt to allow you to do this. Now, of course, all the smart people in the room are saying, yeah, but I'm going to be paying more interest, or it's going to take me longer to pay off that property. Agreed. But what we also want to be focusing in on here is the value of controlling two properties over a period of time is going to potentially surpass that need. So we want to be mindful of it. We want to make sure that our cash flows allow solid jobs, sensible buffers, all of that thing. Remember, we're not trying to buy a property every year and get ourselves into too much debt. We're being sensible. So we only want a series of properties over a buying range of maybe 10 to 15 years, and then we can control that. And that is the power of really what we call smart money management. So you can leverage and lever your money in different ways to be able to get into the market using the equity that you might have in your existing property, or as you're starting off on that journey. That's how you do it, Bryce.
Folks, did that just land? Just the aha moment when you let that land is what Ben's just shown you at a headline level is that it is possible to buy an investment property without impacting the family budget, that allows you, if you've got your home and you want to be able to buy an investment property, you've now got two assets that are in the marketplace, and depending on your circumstances, it might mean that you could buy another one in 2 years' time, so you'd have three, and all of a sudden you can start to see it. So if we go back to our summary here, Ben, we've talked about the fact that we can build a passive income. We talk about $2,000 per week. It can be $1,000, it can be $3,000.
Yep, it's tailored to your situation. Yep.
With 5 properties or less, we chase established properties and we embrace the idea of being borderless within the property space. Then we come over here as an individual and we go, sure, that's fine. I can see how that would work, but it won't work for me. Well, we've just shown you that there is potentially a way where you can free up some cash flow from embracing interest-only lending in the first place, and then a sophisticated strategy that's pretty simple. It's just need to get your head around it to actually free up some cash flow so that you are not actually changing the run rate or the rhythm that's going on with your family. All of a sudden you can start to see, well, okay, it makes sense that I don't have to build an empire, and I can actually find some cash flow to find this. It's starting to make sense. But so...
Hey, and also, the other barrier of entry for some people is, well, you know, because I live in Melbourne and it's very expensive. So I'm dismissing looking at property because I'm looking only, you know, sort of singular and focused in with my lenses on. That's not where you want to be. Where you want to be is basically, you know, you could still potentially buy in an alternative location. So barrier number one, Bryce has just told you, it may not be a cash flow issue. Barrier number two is, well, I can't afford to buy in areas that I know. So open your mind to borderless, open your mind to better money management, and understand that it's not about owning, you know, tens and tens of properties. It is about sensible management and planning.
Stick around, folks. Leave your questions. We're going to answer as many questions as we possibly can. But there's one here from Stephen McGreal that says, will banks just allow you to do that though?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately when you're borrowing money, there's two elements that are essential: serviceability and also, you know, what sort of equity or what security is the bank taking. So if you're with Bank A and you've been with them for say 5 or 6 years and you've had a loan with them for interest only over that 30-year loan term, well, it doesn't mean that you have to stay with that bank forever. Like, the last thing you ever want to do is spend 30 years with one banking institution. The whole idea of having choice and competition is, oh, look at that loan over there, look at that lender over there, they've got a great special offer, including maybe even a cashback deal. So why couldn't I do that? And that, you're new to them, and they're sitting back going, okay, give us a look at the deal, good security, good serviceability. Yeah, we're going to absolutely introduce you to 5 years interest only to start with, and then we want you to pay the loan off. So that is ultimately where you can make sure that you outwit the what's the word I'm looking for? The common thoughts around, is this possible? Yes, it is possible, but you need to basically have a team of people around you who are taking you on that journey, and you need to know what's possible, and that's about our education today.
Hey Ben, we've got a question here from Ruchith. I'm worried that the property prices right now might be a bit bloated with all the demand right now, and that it might go down in a few years' time. I know you'll say it shouldn't be a short term, but worried it might take many years to get back to the price I bought. So Ben, the big question is, we know we can make the work at the individual property level. We know that the individual can actually afford it, but within the world, I mean, we are in a COVID world right now. should we even be considering buying in a FOMO market that considers that very question that we've just been asked there? So is now a good time?
Rightio. So we're going to understand a couple of really important things, right? What is driving demand right now is the economy is doing quite well. There are a record number of job advertisements that we've just seen and historically low interest rates. So we're feeling pretty good as we're coming out of COVID and we're getting into this period of potentially what could be the roaring 20s. Now, when you lower an interest rate, what's actually happening is there's an automatic amount of borrowing that you can do. So the view is with lowering interest rates, how much asset appreciation can occur. And the current consensus from most economists is between 20 to 30% growth based on the cost of money today. So we have only probably seen 5 to 6% so far. So there is a real opportunity with all the green lights showing it today. Now, that said, absolutely right. How far this runs is the question. So if it runs to 40% or 50%, is there a risk that we're going to give up some of those gains in the period just after that first execution? So my first point is there is opportunity now, well and truly, and we are seeing very much opportunity in houses in all of our capital cities at the moment. There's green lights everywhere, as I said. And so there's still a period of potentially 10, 15, 20% growth that people are going to enjoy. So my advice is absolutely a great time to buy. Let's say it did, however, correct price. So let's say I got a 15 or a 20% price growth and then it went down by 5 or 8%. If I'm not a seller and I'm playing the long game, which is what we're teaching you here to do, and that is to hold the property indefinitely, does that really matter to me that I have a book change in valuation, considering I also have the tenants in there helping me pay the property? So I think when I look over the longer term, there is going to be, no doubt, there is going to be at the end of this run, which could be 24 months or more, there's going to be a period of stagnation and potentially there might have been irrational exuberance, and we might see some markets where property prices come off a bit. That's consistent with how every other price cycle's gone. Is that a problem? Is that a problem for us? So my question to you is, I think you've got to back the risk element of what you're trying to do and then say, if I'm going to hold this property for the next decade or two, what is the risk of that happening? And after that period, what normally happens with property prices again? So yeah, there's some areas that I'm sort of saying, lower socio-demographic areas where prices might be at a peak and they might take a little bit longer. But if I'm thinking about areas where there's good job prospects and income growth over time, I'm pretty comfortable when I put my head on the pillow to know that I'm going to be okay.
It all comes down to your outlook. You touched on that. Think about someone who bought in Sydney in the peak of 2016, 2017. They gave some of it back.
Yep.
Right now, that'll be well beyond the price.
They've gone past that, right?
Where they paid. So if we go back to what's important in all of this, because there's always a reason why. I've been doing this for 23 years. There's always a reason why this year is not the year, because it might have been overcooked, right?
Yep.
So it all comes back to this here. If you've actually got buffers in place, you've worked out how you can realistically afford it, and you're not putting yourself in a red line scenario, both with cash flow, with buffer, and if you're in a vulnerable job or industry, those are the things we need to clear up.
Yep.
If you bought yourself some time through having adequate cash flow, well, then this doesn't become a discussion where you need to be fearful, because if you're the perspective where you're a trader or a flipper, timing matters. If you're actually in and out very short term, well, of course you need to be worried about this. But I've never seen a graph, Ben, of any growth where it's gone like that.
No.
So the point is, the game here is it's a time game. The secret sauce is time. So you need to have an end game, put your name on a property, then have all of this lined up, and then just play the time game. People who are looking back over the last decade thinking, geez, I'm pretty glad I bought back in 2010. And then for those people who've been doing it like us since the decade before, since the early 2000s, or in my case, the first one was 1999, then there's two big cycles that you've actually seen through. And there has been negative gearing debates, there's been changes to depreciation, there has been changes to GST, there's been bird flus, everything, all in that time. So it absolutely did some of these changes. But it's important that we understand that If we put our name on a title, the right title, by the way, and we talk about that back here.
Yeah.
If we put our name on the right title, well, then it's being able to play the long game, know that time's going to do all the work for us. And you only need to go back to our couple of episodes. If you go to episode 313, Jock Bing.
Yep.
Been
investing in the 70s.
Been investing for a long time, so listen to that.
Awesome episode.
Scott Keck, episode 302, talking about not only having a look in the future, but someone who's been around also.
50 years in the industry.
50 years.
Yeah.
And then last week we interviewed Bernard Salt, who is the demographer, who's been a virtual mentor for us. We finally got to interview and meet him, giving you enormous hope for the future, because Australia has this superpower, which is largely around our ability to attract people to want to live in our wonderful location. Now, they can't land at the moment. People from overseas cannot come here. So what is happening in the market is being internally generated. We're not even having that excess demand that's coming, which at some point in the next 12 to 18 months will lift the lid and create enormous demand for that as well. So,
a healthy property market, Bryce, is actually good for the economy, because it also means the wealth effect kicks in and people are spending and those jobs are being created. That's why governments of the day have always gone household and gone property as a great way to stimulate what we call the real economy, as opposed to just having a mining boom where that's not necessarily flowing across the greater economy. When you go household and you go property, you're able to achieve that in terms of what that's doing. But hey, just a quick one. Your first two properties, what did you pay for your first one?
199,940.
And your second one?
It's 210.
210. My first one, 120.
Yeah.
My second one paid a lot.
Yeah.
395.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot.
How are you? A bit nervous at the time?
A bit nervous at the time. But we've also got an example that we want to share with you. Not one of ours, because we just want to show this is today, like what happened on the weekend. So there was a property that we discovered.
Yeah, and we're absolutely going to do that. But before we do,
okay, good. Sorry,
I was just going to say, let's wrap this up here, because we've got the properties here where we know that we can do it with 5 or less. We know that we can actually cash flow it, and now we're stating a case that if you're playing the long game, you can actually invest in property and feel comfortable from what you experienced if you're educated.
Yes,
and that's why I wanted to just quickly jump in there, Ben, because
okay, here we go.
We've got a course. It's called Start and Build. Ben and I were disgusted at the fact that there's people all over the country charging tens of thousands of dollars for education. So we wanted to provide a course that was available to the marketplace at a very, very affordable cost. And so throughout the year, we have it at a price, but we are actually putting it at a much lower price. So I just want to show you
40% off, isn't it?
40% off.
Yep.
Now, I'm just showing inside the course here, because one of the bonuses is we show down here how do you actually walk through the parameters and how someone can get $1,000 per week in passive income, $2,000 a week in passive income, and $3,000. So you might have a $50,000 goal, a $100,000 goal, or a $150,000 goal. And so what it is, it's a video where you'll actually see that, and that's just one of the bonuses that you go through for what we're doing here, Ben. So I want to encourage you to go and check that out. Ibis will put a link on the screen shortly, which is thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build. Check that out. Because we do have that on sale for this week only.
Yep.
Next week the price will go back to its original cost. We want you to get your hands on that at a very, very affordable cost.
And the reason for that is we don't want you to just jump in, right? Just because everybody else is doing it. The whole reason why we wanted to do the FOMO story here is it's okay to jump in when you're educated. It's not okay just to put, as you say, throwing or putting your name on a title anywhere on any type of property is going to be detrimental, or could be seriously detrimental, considering the high value cost of buying property and the debt you have to get into. So it is not just a matter of grabbing any property. Even with all the green lights up, there is still an art to selecting the right asset, making sure that you're maximising the amount that you can borrow and the purchase price based on your cash flow analysis, and then looking and saying, I've got this for the short term and I've got this for the longer term, and then ultimately I can build on top of that. And really coming back to the course information, we really show you not just to get one, but basically to finish the job. So start with the end goal in mind, plan to become what you plan to become, and then work through that. And you can see all of the moving parts. So when you are pushing go on your story, you can confidently say that you're informed. Okay, you're informed and your education levels you've moved the dial on that. So it's not just about that or listening to Uncle Frank who says, just go and do it, anyone can do it, it's not that hard. When we told you that, if you had bought new, you may be, looking at some red ink into the future.
That's important. Ben said you've got to be informed. That's the important part. We said the early warning sign with FOMO is for people who are uninformed, uneducated, so that is part of that. So folks, stick around. We are going to show you an example of a property that Ben was just about to talk about. We're going to show you the benefits of time.
Power of time.
And we're going to answer all your questions. But before we do, we're just going to cut to a video so that you can actually see some of the results that our students have had through doing our Start and Build course.
Yeah, it's really good. They really explain all of the terms in this course. So you've really, you're armed with the right tools that you need to succeed in your property investment journey. I thought it was very, very valuable.
The true, goal of the course is that it gives you a fundamental understanding of the basics, the true drivers for positive wealth success.
If you were just starting out, I think that would be amazing you definitely get heaps from it.
Definitely do Start and Build course, 100%. It'll set you on the right track, set you on the right path. It'll open up your mind onto how you really should be doing things.
That moment when your motivation actually seems to die down, or when your goals actually get derailed, the process that Ben and Bryce discussed have helped me in particular to get back and clear up the vision.
I've always seen the big differences between people that have succeeded and not succeeded. And the one thing that I think differentiates the two are people that just try something. The people that don't really succeed are the ones that stop or don't try at all. Just do it. Think of Nike. Just do it. That's it.
So there you have it, folks. There's some results from some of our students that have taken. Well over 1,000 people have been through that course, which we initially launched for the first time last year. And it's been such a success that we're launching it again at this reduced price at this point in time. So we're excited about that. We're going to go through all of your questions. Leave them in the comments now. But we just want to talk about a property. And just a reminder too, if you want to get access to our top 10 FOMO mistakes that property investors make, all you need to do is go to thepropertycouch.com.au/FOMO. There'll be a link on the screen shortly. Basically, you can download that for free, and there is plenty of information in there where you can just have a look at your leisure around the top 10 FOMO mistakes to make sure that you're not doing them. But Ben, you saw a property on the weekend that you want to talk about.
Yeah, it's always, for a student of this and someone who's been doing it for a long time, you still want to validate your theories and make sure that everything's moving in the right direction. Now, what I've done is obviously stumbled across the results in the auction results over the weekend in Sydney. Came across a property which attracted my attention with the fact that for almost 50 years, so the last time this property was sold was for $32,000 around 48 years ago. Now, when people talk about medians, I'm not a big fan of median values and how you measure prices. But when you get to the individual property, there's no hiding. And sometimes you can also say, well, that's because there's been $1 million spent on renovations on that property. Well, that's because of X. Well, we're about to show this property that isn't necessary. Let's bring it up on the screen. All right, let's have a look. So here we are. So this property on the weekend sold for $3.25 million, I think it was, $3.255 million. Now, Bryce, there it is. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay. Here it is.
Yeah, but what about all the renovations and everything that's been done with this
property? Well, let's have a look at it. Let's have a look, see if it's land value that they've bought with a nice little house on it as well.
All right.
Beautiful. Nice location.
Location's pretty good.
Love Haberfield. Yeah.
Good size block.
Good size block. Plenty of potential.
All right. So inside, when's the renovations been done?
Oh, it's still not showing us inside yet, Bryce. What do you reckon that is for? Oh, now the backyard.
Okay, so we're up to the fifth property before we've seen what's inside. Okay.
So, oh no, look, they've spent, Bryce, I'm wrong. They've spent some money. They've got a new oven, but that's Look, everything else. Oh, look at that floor. Look at that walls. Oh, look at the vinyl. Right? Very, very. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, they put one new vanity unit in it.
That'll come back.
But I think the bathtub is probably
I think
the
those
original.
tiles might be original.
There we go. Now, the point I'm making here is that is around a 10% compounding return each year, which is magic. I mean, those types of numbers, you add your yield on top of that over that time period, which would have been 3 or 4%. You're talking about compounding returns in that 13 to 14% range. Now, our job as educators and financial educators and property educators is we want to make sure that, and not everything's going to turn out as rosy as that, let's put it into context, but just that little bit of extra understanding and knowledge that you can gain around asset selection, owner-occupier appeal, in terms of investment grade versus investment stock. All of these things we talk about and teach you as part of the course, where what we've done is condensed it into, it's still 14 or 15 hours of education, but if you think about it, what we've tried to do is condense hundreds and hundreds of episodes of the podcast and all of our
Just curating
it all into this accelerated learning program that will allow you to hopefully improve your decision making when it comes to property investing.
There you go, folks. So we're going to put the link up on the screen. You can go and check that out. We'd certainly encourage you to do that. There's some comments and questions that have come through here. We've got CBD apartment in Melbourne. Should that be considered?
No. Next.
CBD stands for could be dangerous. Newcastle, have my 4 investment properties plus PPR. Just happy to have it built before the current hot market, reaping the rewards of rental increases and equity gains at the age of 36.
Outstanding.
That is a powerful message there from Graham, because the people that are in the current market that are enjoying the increase in value of their home, imagine if you actually had 5 or less other properties, let's call it 3, where all of a sudden you've got 4 properties going up in value, and then the rents adjust, you can start retiring out the debt, and then you can actually, because the goal is to actually get to ideally a retired debt scenario where you're just getting pure cash flow that are coming from these properties. So well done, Graham. That is fabulous. We were a little flippant on the CBD apartments.
Well,
we've just done 1 million episodes on that.
Yeah.
It is just, there's oversupply challenges. You can see that it's incredibly vulnerable from the COVID scenario we are now. The supply is endless.
Context is high density is always dangerous because you don't know what's coming next. We don't know when the students will arrive. But you're right in terms of buy low when others are fearful, be greedy. I get that concept. But I just think that there is, properties are high cost to exchange. So there's stamp duties on the way in, and there's obviously potential capital gains tax on the way out. So we like to hold the great assets and keep them going. So if you want to trade and you're taking a bit more of a speculative play, we just sort of always say to beginners and to our community, there's money to be made better and easier at a lower risk level than than buying something.
Asset selection is critical. In FOMO, asset selection is critical. Like, there is the saying that when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. The tide is in. You can't see who is got bathers on and who doesn't have bathers on. It's not until later you'll find that out. Cam Jones, hi Ben and Bryce. With record low interest rates and higher rates for offset mortgages, do you guys still recommend offsets? Here in New Zealand, I don't think they are as popular as Australia. Now, that could be an hour in its own, Ben. Can you summarise that in 30 seconds?
I still want my money that is stationary and a buffer protecting me for any emergency events in my offset every day of the week, because I'm offsetting the interest cost. Is that lazy money compared to where you might get a better return on that? Maybe, but where you are putting that money at risk and at greater risk than being an offset. So if you've got a huge amount of money in offset, then you might want to, basically take a calculated, educated investment into alternatives. But from my point of view, offsets are the bee's knees for money that you need to have at call that allows you to be able to, ride out any unforeseen events.
I have offsets, still using them, multiple offsets. So this one's from Giannis Stamus, Kangaroo Island in South Australia. Definitely an aha moment, Ben. I thought I had to be some sort of property tycoon to experience success, but listening to you guys and reading your book put me on the right track. That is important a message to land.
Yeah.
Like, you do not need to have swags of properties. You can do it for the majority of people, 3, 4 or 5 properties. And if you can do it with 3, we're not going to recommend you do 4 because it's the minimum effective dose. So anything to add while
No, it's all
fish
good.
for another one? Ivis has given. Here we go. Kaylee is from Cairns. Should you be purchasing positively geared properties only so that you can afford to hold the properties?
There's a trade-off, and there's nothing wrong with people who have lower household incomes as a means to. I'm applauding anyone who's buying property sensibly and as part of their longer-term investment strategy. So if it's positively geared, which means it gives you more comfort because you don't have that strong surplus, but that trade-off is usually around capital growth. And that you don't necessarily get the same level of capital growth because the areas where there's more renters or demand for rent doesn't necessarily see the same level of capital growth that you do get in your bigger cities. Now, with interest rates as low as they are and potentially some depreciation on some properties, you're going to be almost neutrally geared anyway. And also the final piece of that neutrally geared puzzle is the loan to value ratio that you take out. So if you've got a loan to value ratio of around 65, with a higher yield at the moment, you're almost cash flow neutral outside of any maintenance and costs associated with that. So always be mindful of the ongoing costs. So if it's a house and it's positively geared, better if you've got a unit, don't forget your body corporates and all of those things because they can sting. And then there's land tax that also comes in there and says, surprise, you've got to pay me as well.
Little tip for units, do the rental yield after body corporate when you're comparing properties as well.
Good tip.
So there you go, folks. We appreciate all the questions. A couple of things to remind you. Get yourself a copy of this report, thepropertycouch.com.au/FOMO. We'd love for you to get that. And we would also love for you to go and check out our course that we think is affordable, high quality content that you can watch on demand that can help you build out a property portfolio so that you can actually achieve a portfolio where you can retire on $2,000 per week. We would love to see you do that. So
it's an investment in them. We're talking to you as you're watching this and we're saying this is an investment in you. I remember buying I paid $1,000 for all of the latest information around self-managed super funds at the time because I didn't know enough. So you've got to make sure you pay an investment in yourself because an investment in you will ultimately pay that off. So just think about this as an investment into your future and it'll help you in terms of not making FOMO mistakes and not making plenty of other mistakes that a lot of people make out there.
Now, if you've enjoyed this content, this is exactly how we do it in the course. We go through and we write it out in front of you, so it's the same sort of content. If you feel like someone else would benefit from this, maybe you'd like to share it or tag them in the comments, tag their name or like it. We'd certainly love to share this information. But the whole goal here was to show you that there are early warning signs with FOMO. FOMO is not the problem. A market that you're buying in that is experiencing FOMO is not the problem. The problem is people who are buying as a result of FOMO without being educated. So we want to do whatever we can. You can buy it with 5 properties or less. There's ways that you can get some cash flow, and we can show you that now is actually a good time to be buying if you've got the right mindset, the right strategy, and the right goals in mind. You're not trying to get rich quick and all those sorts of things. If that's the case, don't buy the course if you want to get rich quick. It won't help you.
No.
But thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build. Go and check that out. And we have a podcast coming out, Ben, in what's the
1
time?
hour.
1 hour. So why don't you check that out? But it's been fun, mate.
Thank you.
And we'd love for you to tune in each week for The Property Couch, and you can go to thepropertycouch.com.au.